Waste is one of our big issues in society, especially when it comes to plastic. And I know that a lot of organizations are looking to change that, and it's a much needed project for many businesses. But what that really takes and how we are delivering progress is something you know a lot about. So I'm really excited that you want to talk to us about that here today.
Thanks, Jessie. So I'm Kaylee. I'm the Plastics Technical Manager for CDP. I lead the development of CDP's Plastics Disclosure Framework. So this is really to get corporates to take action to reduce their plastic pollution and waste. In 2023, we had just under 3,000 corporates disclosing to us for the first time, representing about 25 trillion market cap value. Previously, I've worked on global circular economy projects, policy projects globally, including the EU's Packaging Waste Directive, the strategy for sustainable and circular textiles, as well as Singapore's deposit return scheme, which was the first of the kind in Southeast Asia.
Why is plastic and waste such an important topic? Why do we need to pay attention?
Definitely. So I think a lot of people are aware of the issues to do with plastic pollution. I'm sure everyone's seen that picture of the turtle with the plastic bottle cap around their neck. There is a whole lot of interconnected issues to do with plastics. Plastic pollution is, of course, really, really bad. 20,000 tons of plastic flows into the seas every year in APAC. In multiple places, Indonesia, China, multiple places, but there's no continent which doesn't have any river plastic flowing into the oceans. Human health is another really big issue. 16,000 chemicals are involved in the production of plastic. About 4,000 of these have been proven to be chemicals of concern, so hazardous for human health. They're carcinogens, they are endocrine disruptors, and transparency on chemicals of concern are really low. The producers of plastic, they kind of know that they're using these bad chemicals, so they don't want stakeholders further down the value chain to know about them. And also carbon emissions. If single-use plastics continue at the same rate, production of it continues at the same rate currently, by 2050, it will be 5 to 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions. So at that point, you're looking at countries, the equivalent of countries with plastic pollution. And then again, the last thing is the social justice issues. There's a part of the US called Cancer Alley. Cancer Alley is along the Mississippi River. It has lots and lots of plastic production plants. So the chemicals are going into the air, they're going into the water. These areas are predominantly low income, very diverse areas. So you're looking at social justice issues, you're looking at human health issues, you're looking at environmental issues, polluting our waterways, our air, our soil. It's a very interconnected issue, which is embedded in our everyday lives.
I'm really keen to understand, because the viewers on this channel, they are predominantly people that work in the industry, work with businesses, trying to create change, right? So if I'm a sustainability leader, what do I need to do? How do I get started, and how do we manage that consumption better?
Great. So it can feel scary. It can feel like there's so many issues, and how the hell do I deal with them all? Right now, we manage plastics in a linear economy. So a linear economy, we take, we make, and then we waste. And we keep pumping out these new plastics that we don't necessarily need. We need to transition to a circular economy. So we keep materials in use for longer, we design out waste and pollution, and therefore we regenerate nature. We have less impacts on our natural ecosystems because you're not constantly extracting resources, which, a lot of these resources is oil. Plastic is made from fossil fuels. So you have the whole host of issues to do with fossil fuels as well. We need to keep plastics in use for longer. We're never going to get rid of plastics fully. And that is not a feasible ambition. But there may be some parts of your business operations where you can actually get rid of them. The example I like to use here is flexible plastic bags that you put your fruit in supermarkets. Do we really need that? It's a lot of supermarkets, you will buy your fruit by weight or by item anyway. is putting it in a flexible plastic bag, which is very difficult to recycle, and very, it contaminates the waste stream, isn't necessary. So there's a lot of different issues, a lot of different focal points you can focus on to do with plastics. But what's really important is where you're using plastics in the first place. So the first stage is mapping the plastics in your value chain.
And when you've done that, then is it looking at design alternatives? Is it packaging alternatives? What would you recommend? Do you have something that's like, this is a great alternative, or this is a way of designing for it?
Yeah, so I think it's about viewing your plastics in what we call the waste hierarchy. So the waste hierarchy, it starts with rethink or redesign. So here, rethinking whether you need to use it, like the flexible plastic bag example, or redesigning the plastics you use to make them more recyclable. We see corporates changing multi-layer, multi-material plastic packaging to monomaterial. So multi-layer, multi-material packaging is really difficult to recycle because you have very thin films of lots of different materials. Some of it's paper, some of it's other plastic polymers. And you can't separate it out, so it just goes into landfill or incinerated. So switching to a monomaterial is a lot easier to recycle. They are the APR design guides, which you can have a look at, which it says what's the preferential option for your plastic packaging and what's really bad. Another thing is coloring. Clear PET is the best to recycle because it can be recycled back into clear PET. But when you get to opaque plastics, then it becomes a little trickier, and that can't be recycled at a high quality as much. So that's the rethink or redesign. Then we go to reuse. Can you implement reuse systems? This can look like a return or refill system. So you see big corporates are doing this. They're piloting it. Coca-Cola, PepsiCo are piloting returnable packaging, which you purchase it, you use it, and then you return it back to the shop, and then they'll clean it and refill it again. But there's also reuse systems as well. You can work with your suppliers to see if they will take back the packaging that they use, and then they can reuse it. And this is very good for secondary or tertiary packaging. So that is not packaging that is protecting the actual product. It's the packaging that gets used for distribution, kind of putting all the crates together and wrapping it in plastic and then distributing it. And this is really good because it doesn't matter if it gets a little bit damaged during distribution or transportation. It's more a convenience thing. So work with your suppliers and see if you can implement a reverse logistics scheme. So that is reuse. Repurpose is the next down the waste hierarchy. Repurpose is sometimes called upcycling. So you may have some plastic that you can't use to in the same format as it was before, but maybe you can find something else for it and get creative here. I've been in pubs where they have they use plastic bottles as their lighting. That they make like chandeliers out of it. It's fun, it's creative, and I'm sure there's a lot of different areas in your business that you can repurpose plastic. And I guarantee if your consumer or stakeholder sees that, they're going to go, wow. They're going to be like, that's innovative and that's really cool. And then the last one, in the good ways of managing a waste is actually recycling. So as you can see, recycling shouldn't be your first option. It is necessary, of course, but we can't recycle our way out of the plastic crisis. We are producing too much, we're consuming too much, and if we just focus on recycling, it's not a silver bullet. We need to think about reuse, we need to think about repurposing and redesigning way further up the value chain. And then the plastic that you have not managed to repurpose, reuse, recycle, or redesign, then you recycle it. And of course, increasing recycled content is very important. That is a circular economy principle. You are reducing the amount of virgin plastics you are producing and all the impacts, the carbon emissions, the chemicals to do with that. But it shouldn't be the only thing you can think of. So I think the circular economy is very interesting, actually. There's a lot of opportunity, a lot of innovative ideas that you can think of. But I would say the one thing is don't just focus on recycling.
It's interesting. I love that you're mentioning the bottles. I'm from Denmark, and you know the entire pant system and how that's working. Do you, because it's something I've been thinking about with the new EU regulations on plastic, and we're really trying to reduce the amounts that we are producing and consuming. Do you think we will see more initiatives that will directly hit the consumers?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think regulation in the EU especially, it's really starting to push the barrier of plastic usage. So the eco-design regulations came out recently as well. So that was about they're prioritizing designing plastics for durability, for modularity, so you can separate it out and reuse different parts or recycle different parts. What I think is really important here is consumer awareness. So yeah, you mentioned Denmark's deposit return scheme. That is a great initiative because that means that, one, the producers of these polluting plastics, of bottles or materials as well, often cans are included, and so they need to pay extra to place it on the market, and then it's that fee that then funds the whole model. So it's great. It's part of the polluter pays principle. It's kind of an extended producer responsibility principle where the producers have to pay extra. But deposit return schemes work the best when they are convenient for consumers. So I worked on the Singapore deposit return scheme, and what we found really helped is making sure return vending machines are placed in transport hubs. So they are placed in areas where they get high footage. They are placed in schools, big offices, and also making it as accessible as possible. Old people may not be able to use an RVM. They're very old. It's a new technology. So you also need to make sure they can return their bottles over the counter. So it's all about looking at the different parts of how we can minimize waste and making sure we're hitting these accessible points as well.
You're here also from CDP, which is amazing, and you know a lot about disclosure. So what role do you think disclosures plays in this landscape? How is it becoming an enabler, and is it relevant?
Definitely, yes. So I would say disclosure is very relevant because it creates the data you need to be able to act and to thrive in a sustainable world. If you can't manage what you don't measure. And disclosure is a way to measure your impacts, so you have the areas to focus on, so you know where you need to increase your progress to reach your targets. At CDP, we have moved this year to an integrated holistic questionnaire. So you can disclose to environmental issues. You can see all the different environmental issues and report on the ones you need. So before it was 3 different questionnaires and there were duplication. So here, what we've done is you can disclose once to CDP, and it can be used by many. It can be used for your ESRS or CSRD disclosure, your TNFD, your GRI. So I think we have really tried to reduce the reporting burden for corporates this year. But equally, I think corporates shouldn't see it as a burden. If you just look at reporting, disclosure as a compliance issue where you have to push time and resources to it, and then it's done, and then next year you do it all again, that is frustrating, but you're not using the data as you could be. Data is vital to understand where your impacts are and where you need to take action. So use that data.
Is it predominantly large corporations, or do you have different ways where SMEs can report on this as well?
So the plastics questionnaire is just for corporates at the moment. We do have a SME questionnaire, which is mainly focused on climate change. But I would say if you're an SME and you're not obligated to disclose under CSRD, that doesn't mean you can't use CDP's questionnaire as inspiration. In the plastics questionnaire, we talk about recycled content. We ask, what is the recycled content of your plastic packaging? We ask, what's the circularity potential? What percentage is reusable, technically recyclable, or recyclable in plastic and at scale? So you can look at the questionnaire and you can see what should I really be measuring or asking my suppliers about, even if you don't need to disclose. So use it as inspiration.
I can really echo that. So when I'm running the Impact Accelerator program with Planner 1.5, one of the things when we're going through disclosures, we're doing things with reference for. In many cases, it is SMEs or singular representatives that are going into larger organizations. And I say, when you're creating your baseline year and you are not necessarily obligated to do this, it's such a good guide to actually go in and look at, have I covered all my bases? So really echo that point. The last thing I want to know is there's obviously also benefits to this. And what do you see as, if you want to go beyond and argue the business case for doing this, what's a good reason?
So there is a wealth of reasons that I think go beyond compliance. One is definitely future-proofing your company. We see Client Earth suing governments now. We see Client Earth suing companies because a lot of companies now are at a liability risk. They are liable for the pollution they create. They are liable for, if they're not compliant. And reputation is huge. The fast-moving consumer goods corporates, they have started to take action on making their packaging more circular because it's been washing up on the beaches. And it's in everyone's, consumer awareness is very high about plastic pollution now. So I would say it's really about future-proofing your company. It's about your reputation. And then financial institutions, they are looking at the risks of plastic. So at CDP last year, we created an investor letter, and 49 financial institutions representing 3.5 trillion worth of assets signed it, calling for mandatory disclosure in the Global Plastics Treaty. So FIs want to see plastics data because one, it helps them rank the companies to investing, but also it helps the FIs support the companies in different areas. It helps the FIs know where they need to channel their funding into the company to drive progress. And lastly, it helps them track progress against targets. A good example here is Mattel, who make Barbie, and Green Century, a very big ESG investor. They created a target of 25% reduction in plastic packaging. So the opportunities are huge. And what I will say, going back to circular economy, it's a business opportunity. There is a wealth of innovation that's going to be needed for circular economy. And there is a lot of, investment going into it. I think it's going to be, multi-trillion-dollar opportunity. And it really is the future, because eventually we're going to get to a point where people aren't going to buy from linear models, and they're going to expect a circular model of businesses. So definitely, I think now is really the time to start enabling the circular economy in your business, in your value chain, and that is how your business is not just going to survive, but it's also going to thrive.
That's such a positive note to end on. So I'll just say thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us here today, and enjoy the conference.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.